You are an MLB team. Cool. You employ one of the best players in the history of baseball. So far, so good. But wait, there's a third thing, and it's a bad one. That player wants to be traded. No. It seems that there's nothing, no roster move, no amount of money that will change the player's mind. What do, MLB team? Well, it turns out you get a lot better, almost by accident. The Seattle Mariners trading Ken Griffey Jr. was a big deal, but not in the way anyone expected. This video is presented by T-Mobile. In the 1990s, some incredible athletes called Seattle, Washington home. Ken Griffey Jr. soared above the rest. He was so talented, so entertaining, and so likable. But instrumental as he was to the Mariners, Griffey didn't really call Seattle home. By the late 1990s, Griffey had put down roots in Orlando, Florida, for the same reasons most people choose Orlando, Florida. As the Griffey kids reached school age, they had to spend more and more time close to home, far, far away from their dad in Seattle. So when Griffey made a shocking trade demand in autumn of 1999, that was his reason. There had been other issues. Griffey had some misgivings about Seattle's new stadium, and the team had been losing. That stuff mattered, but not nearly as much as geography. Ken had tried a back-and-forth lifestyle late in the 99 season and found it wasn't enough. He felt miserable. And the pull toward home became stronger following two tragic deaths of friends and sports heroes in their 40s. Griffey's neighbor, the golfer Payne Stewart, died in a plane crash in October of 99. Days later, NFL great Walter Payton succumbed to a rare cancer. Those losses shook Griffey. Life is too precious to spend so much of it away from family. A man entering his 30s could no longer tolerate working thousands of miles away from his wife and children. So, no hard feelings, but even for a record-setting amount of money, Griffey did not want to extend his stay in Seattle. The Mariners determined that they had better heed his trade request and get compensated for his departure rather than watch him leave in free agency the following winter. As a long-standing veteran star of a single franchise, Griffey held the right to veto any trade, and with that in mind, he reportedly gave Seattle a list of 4 destination teams. All of them were in the National League, and all, well, if not right next to Orlando, at least much closer than Seattle is. So that was how the Seattle Mariners entered winter meetings 1999. They had one of the best players in baseball, still basically in his prime, and they had a list of 4 teams they could trade him to. That's not the most leverage anyone has ever had in trade talks, but you could do a lot worse. So let's look at the options. Off the bat, there was the non-option option. At least one team not on Griffey's list, the St. Louis Cardinals, took a crack at acquiring Jr., but the talks didn't go anywhere. The fever dream of a Griffey-Mark McGwire lineup tandem never materialized. Griffey probably wouldn't have accepted a Cardinals deal anyway. He was annoyed that the Mariners even floated the idea of dealing him to a non-list team. So, back to the list. People assumed that Atlanta made the most sense. 90-minute flight to Orlando, really good team, plenty of options to assemble, and impressive return package. But nah. The presumed frontrunners bowed out pretty quickly. As the defending NL champs, the Braves just didn't feel much pressure to meet Seattle's lofty trade demands. Same goes for the Astros. Houston checked in, but ultimately decided the price was too high. The Astros just didn't want Griffey that bad, though they were a little nervous about a rival National League team getting Jr. The Astros owner was like, hey man, how about Cleveland? Go to Cleveland. Just stay in the AL, my dude. By the time the winter meetings rolled around, the actual frontrunner had emerged: Cincinnati. The Reds were worse and thus more desperate to get Griffey than any other team on his list. And while Cincinnati is 900 miles from Orlando, not that close, it is also the city where Ken Jr. grew up while his dad was playing a legendary stint for the golden era 1970s Reds. Ken Griffey Sr. played another stint with the Reds in the late 80s and had recently taken a job as Cincinnati bench coach. Cincy was Griffey country. Reds GM Jim Bowden had been trying for years to bring Jr. back to his hometown. The opportunity to finally get it done was a dream come true. So Bowden showed up to winter meetings in Anaheim laser focused on making a Griffey trade. This is a sick line. Seattle and Cincinnati tossed proposals back and forth. A lot, for days, but they just didn't get anywhere. The sticking point was Pokey Reese, which is a good name for a sticking point. The young Reds infielder was coming off a breakout season, and the Mariners really wanted him. But the Reds would not give up Pokey Reese, not even for Griffey. Pokey Reese himself was like, damn, I would have traded me for Griffey, but Cincinnati wouldn't do it. That simple fault line could not be bridged, and after a few days exchanging offers, talks between the Mariners and Reds fell apart. So, in came the Mets, the fourth team on Griffey's four-team list. New York GM Steve Phillips announced his interest in Griffey and then got to work constructing a trade with the Mariners. It happened fast. Within 48 hours, Griffey's agent received a call from the Seattle front office. We have got a deal. I've seen a few reported versions of the return package, but the upshot from Ken's perspective was that with a simple contractual thumbs up, he would move to Queens. Stadium close to the airport, nice quick flight to Orlando, exactly what Griffey wanted, right? Nope. Ken Griffey Jr. said no, thumbs down. After all that waiting and some displeasure with the Mariners contacting non-list teams, Griffey not only rejected the Mets trade, but told Seattle his original four-team list was now narrowed to one, the Reds. He would only accept a trade to Cincinnati. It was either that or stick around and wait out the remaining year on his Mariners contract. No other trades. Okay, so the Mariners got back in touch with the Reds and said, hey guys, anything changed? Cincinnati said, nope, we will not give you Pokey Reese, and matter of fact, several other promising young players are also off limits. This was a bind for Seattle, but to their credit, the Mariners held firm well into the new year. Spring training 2000 approached without a deal. Enough time passed that pressure started to shift to Cincinnati. Reds fans had gotten pretty excited about Griffey's homecoming. Were the Reds really going to hold off on trading for a local hero superstar because of some relatively minor player? Reds ownership began to stir. Cincinnati first sought assurances that Griffey would sign a team-friendly contract extension with his hometown team, like much cheaper than what Seattle had offered him. Griffey's people said, yeah, sure, he really wanted to be a Red. Time to find a trade. Cincinnati still wouldn't give up Pokey Reese, but they did finally agree to surrender 27-year-old outfielder Mike Cameron. It ended up being a straight-up deal between Seattle and Cincinnati, which I mention mostly because a proposed three-team version of the deal would have included another future legend and totally changed history. But in the end, this was it. Ken Griffey Jr. became a Cincinnati Red. Seattle got these guys. Griffey immediately signed a record-setting contract extension that still fell way below what he could have gotten from Seattle. And the aftermath here, really the aftermaths, it's fascinating. For the Reds, Griffey was quite good at times, but severely limited for most of his tenure because of a succession of injuries and operations. The Reds didn't win much at any point during the Griffey era. And yet there's less regret about the trade on that side than you might expect. Things happen. Even for a lot of Reds fans, the mere return of Griffey to his hometown was a thrill enough to justify the move and all the losing that came after it. Seattle remained warm toward Griffey too. Ken somehow managed to demand a trade and kind of disappoint his new team without really burning bridges in either direction. Seattle welcomed him back as an opponent and then briefly as a Mariner to finish his career. Pokey Reese, he was okay. After the Reds refused to trade him and indeed almost blew up the whole deal over Pokey, Reese's numbers dipped and never returned to their 1999 highs. Mike Cameron, meanwhile, the guy Cincinnati did agree to send away, became a fantastic Seattle Mariner, damn near replacing Griffey's late career production. Seattle's next few regular seasons were the best in franchise history, period. They didn't win a title or anything, but they won way more after Griffey's departure than they had immediately prior. The same goes for Griffey co-star Alex Rodriguez. That surprising success has more to do with Ichiro Suzuki than with any of the guys they acquired in the Griffey trade, but it's still funny how much the Mariners won that trade on paper. Even the Mets, the team that thought they had a deal for Griffey only for him to say no, came out of this ordeal as winners. New York vastly outpaced Cincinnati and the rest of them to earn the 2000 NL wildcard, and then they made it all the way to the World Series. This trade, the demand, the negotiations, the agreement, the surprise rejection, and then the actual transaction, constituted a big, big deal in MLB history. But when you look around, it was not a big deal in any of the ways people expected. Hey, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to Secret Base on Patreon. And I kind of feel like we made something about the Mariners one time. If you want to learn more about the Mariners, I'll try to think of what it was. Haha, it was a little joke I did.